What's going on, guys? Tyson the Trainer here, back from another episode of Sports Talk. Now, funnily enough, I have covered this a little bit before, but I do want to go back into this video again because I don't think it actually showed up correctly. And we're going to be talking about sodium and salt because that's kind of been something that I have been talking about trending this week, and I just want to kind of cover it. So we're going to be talking about, just so you know how much sodium you should be having a day, and I guess just, making sure that you are having adequate enough for yourself, all right? So what I've tended to find based on usually females who are dieting or females who are on the lighter side of things, so not all females dieting, but usually when they're in their 60s or like below, so low 60s, high 50s type of thing, I always start to notice the females start to get a little bit dizzy, a little bit lightheaded, especially when they stand up fast and things like that. Males can also experience this too, but usually it is more females. And this could actually be due to low blood pressure, okay? So if you are someone who has low blood pressure or you're not sure, first thing to go and do, go and get it checked. Okay. Now, usually a doctor's going to look at low blood pressure and say, oh, it's not an issue. Don't worry about it. You're fine. Because low blood pressure, at the end of the day, is more beneficial than high blood pressure. Okay. But if it's, negatively impacting you by making you dizzy, lightheadedness, fatigue and stuff like that, you obviously don't want to be experiencing that. So what we want to make sure we're doing when it comes to, if you are someone who is experiencing low blood pressure, like I said, first, get it checked. Secondly, get a blood check, okay? So go and see, are you low in iron or B12? Because iron and B12, if you are anemic or low in these things, you can actually be causing low blood pressure from that because you're lacking red blood cells. So if you are low in iron or B12, obviously go and supplement with that to actually fix that issue and address it, or add more red meat into your diet so you can increase that overall B12 and iron deficiency, and that by itself may just correct it. Okay. Now, if that hasn't corrected it, what you're going to be doing next is to add a little bit of salt and sodium to your diet. Now, the thing is, females are usually more health seeking than males. So they choose more low processed foods or less processed foods. They choose more whole food. They do not choose foods high in sodium. They don't salt their food as much. But this is actually something that you could be causing issues if your sodium intake is too low. All right. Now, sodium isn't something you need to be scared of either, especially again, if you are someone on the low side of blood pressure, you want sodium in your diet. If you are someone who's a salty sweater, you want sodium in your diet. How do you know if you're a salty sweater? Taste yourself when you sweat, okay? It's going to be quite salty if you know you're a salty sweater. You can do that, or you can do tests to kind of see how much you actually sweat in a day. Now, the recommendation is 2,500 milligrams a day for both males and females. So the first thing you can do, especially if you're a female, start to track and see, are you getting enough sodium in your day? Most of you are probably going to be looking around like the 1,300 to 1,500 mark, most likely, and it's really low. So bump that sodium intake up to the 2,500 milligrams. And the way you can do this is by salting your food easily, using foods, cooking in foods like with soy sauces or vegeta, which is kind of like a vegetable stock thing, which tastes amazing, or using more herbs and spices or like, all-purpose seasoning, things that are higher in sodium overall will bump up that sodium intake, okay? Secondly, choosing more processed foods. So again, I'm not advocating that you choose just rubbish foods, but choosing foods that are higher in sodium can help. So wholemeal wraps are high in sodium, or wraps themselves are actually quite high in sodium, which is good because sodium is a preservative. So things that are going to be preserved are actually going to be higher in sodium. So again, like I said, wraps, baked beans, canned goods, diced tomatoes, things like that. They're all going to have a higher sodium intake, and they're great ways you can add in while still being healthy and increasing your overall sodium intake, right? Now, again, we want to try and get you to that 2,500 milligram mark, and that in itself is probably going to help with you fixing your sodium issues. Also with that, I just want to kind of give people an idea, especially, especially females who are a bit scared of sodium. Your weight, you're not going to look puffy or watery or anything when you have sodium, okay? People don't understand how sodium works in the body. And so when you actually have salt, yes, your weight may increase, but it doesn't give you a puffy, fluffy, watery look, all right? That's just due to the imbalance versus of usually it's going to be higher carbohydrate, higher sodium intake, higher overall calories, not just higher sodium in itself, okay? So do not be scared if you get a little bit of fluctuation in the scale weight. Do not be scared if you think you're getting watery or anything like that. It's not going to happen. All right, I'm telling you right now, get more sodium in your diet if you are someone who's low in blood pressure or low on the sodium intake, and get to that 2,500 milligram mark. Again, you may see that scale jump up initially, but the body will regulate, especially when you're consistently eating that 2,500 milligrams, and then your weight will come back down. All right, we want to keep consistency with your sodium intake. So we don't want high amounts, then low amounts, and high amounts. You want to try and keep it quite, within reason, rigidity, 400 milligrams give or take. So again, between like, ideally for you, probably like 2,300 to 2,700 milligrams for a female, all right, who's low in weight and low in blood pressure. So I hope that makes sense in regards to if you're someone who is low, how to increase that. And then finally, not just on the sodium side of things, also having caffeine helps increase your blood pressure. So that'll help bump that up a little bit. And then also hydration. Now with hydration, I've talked to you guys a little bit about this before. You want to make sure that you're using your urine color basically as knowing if you're hydrated or not. So if you're clear urine, you're drinking too much liquid. If you are darker than straw, you're drinking too little liquid. So we're looking for a straw colored liquid consistently to know that you're eating enough, to know that you're hydrated enough. People are following this gallon of fucking water a day, 4 liters, 5 liters a day. And if you're doing that and you're having low sodium, you're diluting your electrolytes. And this is why you could also be causing imbalances in your overall blood pressure, because you're having so much liquid, but you're having so little electrolytes, so it's not causing the right ratios. So again, do not overhydrate, but do not underhydrate either. All right. And then when we talk about hydration, it's not just from water. Remember, there are a lot of things that can add that can make you more hydrated than water, and sodium is actually one of those things that'll help with hydration. So if we think full fat coffees or full cream coffees or any type of thing with milk in it is going to hydrate you more than water. Zero sugar calorie drinks is going to hydrate you more than water. Full sugar drinks are going to hydrate you more than water. So anything that's got calories, carbohydrates, or salt in it is going to hydrate you more than water. So if you need to work on your hydration, choose things that may be higher calories or have higher sodium intakes or potassium intakes in them. All right, so that's if you've got low blood pressure. If you are someone who is on the high blood pressure side of things, then with that sodium intake, we want to make sure we monitor it. So for example, I'm an athlete. I train 7 days a week. I sweat very heavily, but I'm a low sodium sweater. I'm a low salt sweater. So for me, I actually have to keep a very big eye on my sodium intake, because if I have sodium that's too high, it will actually push my blood pressure quite high. So for me, I sit at that 2,500 milligram mark. All right. I can push it to 3,000. 3,000 is my max. If I have more than 3,000, my blood pressure is starting to push up. So I know for me, I've got to keep a tight range, which means I choose less processed foods, okay? I make sure that I am keeping adequately hydrated. I make sure that I'm not salting all of my foods and using more herbs and spices versus seasonings and soy sauces and stuff like that. I also try and manage my stress, because stress can also have a part in that. So I make sure that I am trying to take time to reduce my overall stress and my blood pressures in a good range. So again, if you are someone who's on the higher side of things, we kind of do the opposite of what we've told people to do who have low blood pressure, which is kind of cool. And then finally, if you're an athlete and you are within a good, healthy blood pressure range and you track your blood pressure, I would actually try and encourage you to have a little bit more sodium in your diet if you can. Sodium isn't something magic, but it can help your overall performance, because sodium is an electrolyte and it does help with muscle contraction at the end of the day. So if you're someone who wants to try and push a little bit harder, get some better muscle pumps and stuff in the gym, then if you are someone who sits in a healthy blood pressure range and you're around the 2,500, try and push to 3,000, try and push to 3,500. Do small jumps at a time and see, can you increase your sodium while maintaining a healthy blood pressure? Because if you are someone who can get away with higher sodium diet and have lower blood pressure, I would actually say that's quite encouraged, to be honest. Because again, especially if you're a salty sweater too, sodium is not the enemy here, and neither are electrolytes. And so if you can increase your overall sodium intake, and it's going to be more beneficial for you if you're not getting any negative repercussions. I could say for myself, yeah, I'm going to push my sodium intake higher, I'm going to see how I go. But if the detriment is my blood pressure increasing, then it's definitely not beneficial for me. It's causing more harm than good. So there is obviously a risk to reward ratio, and we have to be able to assess based on the person, which is why I'm saying to you guys, you really have to kind of monitor yourself. But again, the best thing you can do, honestly, is go and get yourself a blood pressure monitor and just keep an eye on it for the most part, because some of us aren't aware that our blood pressure could be quite high. It is a silent killer at the end of the day. And so you want to make sure that you do have a healthy blood pressure. So keep an eye on it. And again, if it's too low, you're not going to be dying or anything like that, but you can get dizzy, you can get nauseous, you can fall over, you can potentially wind up in hospital from hyponatremia, from drinking too much water and not having enough sodium. So it's just things that you guys need to be considerate of when it comes to your salt intake. So I hope that answered your questions. If you have any more questions about sodium or anything, make sure to ask me on Instagram at tysonthetrainerr with 2 R's. And until next time, speak to you guys then.